stragglers, but okay, so I'm gonna just start talking about my story. So you'll understand the whole point of me doing this is to try to help people out, not just with my specific health issue, but just to look at what you can do, or that there are ways to make yourself feel better, even when you're told otherwise. So why my story? So this is a guy that I have met with some of my functional practitioner type conferences that I've gone to, and he has a business where he tells or teaches people like me or you to tell your story if you want to, write a book or go on stage or whatever it is. And I haven't paid him the 20 grand or whatever it is to work with him, so I hope this is okay tonight without having done that. But a story not shared does not serve others. So that's kind of the whole premise of I wanted to do this, and I've been told to do this for 10 years now, and I just haven't done it. So here I am now. Okay, so my background, most of you, all of you know that I'm from Mayville. I've been married almost 22 years. It's my husband, Steve, and then my daughter, Allison, 17, and Olivia, 14. So, grew up here my whole life, and then I went to college at NDSU in Fargo, and that's where I graduated from. And then in 2002, we moved to the city's area, just outside of the city. So I haven't been back for a while. It's kind of crazy walking around in the Mayville State to see how different it is in the bookstore even, and all that cool stuff. But anyway, so I just want to start with a timeline kind of my journey of health. And so now I look back to those times, and some things start to make more sense, and you can kind of put a history together to kind of look at, why things kind of ended up the way they did for me. I won't ever know some of these things exactly, but it seems to make sense with what I do know now. So when I look back, I was told, and I was just talking about this with my mom earlier, I was told that, you were that kid that just would take a blanket and go lay in bed and say that you'd have a headache and wanted to take a nap. So I had headaches a lot. Or I've been told that I used to spike fevers out of nowhere, or just when I would get sick, it was a high fever right away, and just that would just happen. So there's some things I have learned now that it could make sense with some of the things I've been having going on in the last 10 years. So it's kind of normal, healthy. I thrived, I participated, I was active, I did all those kinds of things, but I always felt sick, but not sick enough like I shouldn't stay home from school. Just underlying malaise, just a lot of fatigue and a lot of just unexplained sickness. I don't know how to explain it. I always would feel nauseous, but I would never, actually get sick. So it just always was frustrating to me because it was hard to participate, or I had to make myself get to be doing things and be social and that kind of thing because of it sometimes. So in college, but it makes sense when you're in college, when you're stressed and you're working a lot and you're taking hard classes and you don't know what you want to do with your life, and it's just very stressful. So it makes sense that you're going to be fatigued, probably be anxious, feelings a little depression and that kind of thing. And I had many illnesses crop up, just the chronic sinus stuff, the bronchitis and pneumonia, all those kinds of things were just kind of constant. Post-college, it became even worse. And then 2001 and 2004 is when I had my babies, and I feel like that's when things changed, just a little bit for the first one, a little bit more for the second one. And, there's a lot of connection to pregnancy can trigger things, just because obviously it's really hard on our systems. And then in 2007 is when I was diagnosed with the cancer. So it's just kind of the overall view. So some of my symptoms, and I have another slide of it. It started in where I can really identify when I think back for sure. It started in junior high. And then it just progressively got worse with all of these things throughout, that's okay, throughout that time, all through college and past college. So one of the things that was kind of telling towards after the first baby in 2001 was the horse's scratchy throat, and then the lump in my throat. But by this time, there's just so much depression and frustration and anger and just kind of like, why do I feel this way? And why am I so tired? I'm young, I'm healthy, I've got everything, I thought I was healthy. I think I, have everything I need. I'm not, stressed about how I'm gonna pay bills and that kind of thing. So it doesn't make sense. And all the testing, just said, you're normal. So then I thought, well, it must be something that's not right about me. So, the BMI scale. Okay, so, it's basically a medical term. They have to use it for some, parameters and stuff. And so I've always been pretty muscular, so my BMI is always looks terrible. So I just was focused on that and thought, well, I better lose weight. That will solve all my problems if I lose weight. And I really didn't have weight to lose necessarily. It wasn't overweight. It was just, I was going by the BMI, because that's what the doctors would say. Well, maybe you should just lose weight. That when nothing else would really show up. So then I hyper-focused on that, created an eating disorder. Tried to purge, even in high school. I couldn't do it, thank goodness, because I just was trying to control something, and the symptoms continued to get worse and worse. So, let's see, jumping to 2007. So that whole process of the depression and the fatigue and that kind of thing just progressively got worse from college and on, antidepressants, medications. It just got debilitating practically. So finally, it was this, when I look back, I think, okay, this was kind of the end of where I'm starting to figure things out, yet it was probably the hardest time of my life. So June through August of 2007. So when I went to college for my undergrad, I have a biology degree, biology and microbiology, and then I got my secondary science education license. And so throughout this time I had been teaching high school biology, anatomy, physiology, and everything else under the sun in this little school that I taught in Fisher. It was K through 12, so I taught all the science 7th through 12th grade. So I've done a lot of teaching, and then of course a lot in the sciences and human body and physiology and biochemistry, having that basic understanding of things. So I'm teaching, that's why I was going to this, and I was teaching, and so I had summers off with my kids, which is supposed to be so awesome. You get to get the best of both worlds, get to work, and then get to stay home with your kids and all those good things. Well, it is, but this summer in particular was really, really hard for me. So they're 3 and 6 years old. I could barely take care of them. They had our neighbors that we hung out with all the time. They had kids the same age. They played together. Thank goodness we weren't out on some farm where they didn't have anybody else, because, they were just back and forth, and that was at least something that helped me out. With our insurance changes with the pharmacy that we had, I had a lapse in my antidepressant subscription. That's kind of what it is, my prescription. I had a lapse in it, and it was, I think it had been 2 or 3 days, and I started to think, I'm going crazy, something is not right, but they're saying, that it's fine, these medicines aren't addictive and that kind of thing. And to me, that was an addictive response, because I was on it, and all of a sudden, because I screwed up on the lab or the pharmacy or whatever it was with the insurance, a couple days lapse, I was miserable. And again, thank goodness for my neighbor. I called my neighbor. I said, Deanna, can you please take my kids? I don't know what's happening right now. I had to get an emergency prescription, and then they filled the wrong one, and then I lost my mind at the pharmacy. I just felt crazy and just out of control. And that was, at that time it was Effexor. I had been on every antidepressant you can possibly be on, it seemed like. I'd probably been on 8 of them. And each time, it's like it worked until it didn't. It worked until it didn't. And so this time was where I was like, this is powerful. That the fact that my body needs this so much, something's not right. But I needed it, because if I didn't, and my husband travels quite a bit, and especially at that time, so it was just me. So I was like, I need to, take care of them. So I had to get on something, get back on it. And then I always felt really flu-y. Again, I will go back to how I felt when I was in high school a lot, where I felt like I should stay home from school because I'm gonna make other people sick, but I was never really sick. Just that flu-y, achy, just body aches. I felt like I was having growing pains all the time, like when you complain about that when you're a kid. Obviously that wasn't it. But then I remember, just because of the timing of it, I had gone on a trip in the middle of June, and 2 weeks after I got home, I put on a pair of pants that I had bought for the trip, and they didn't fit me 2 weeks later. So it was 20 pounds in 2 weeks. So I was like, what in the heck is going on? Because I hadn't done anything different. So I don't know. It was just the weirdest thing. So go to my annual physical in September. And I started back to school because I had to go back, and was really not thinking this was going to be a great transition this time. And so I did my just general yearly exam, and you know how they check your neck? She goes, oh, there's a little lump there. We'll have that checked out. But I was also there because my yearly physical, and also because I needed anxiety meds to go back to school. So that should have been like one of the first thoughts of maybe I should quit teaching if I need meds to actually do my job. So, and it was just a temporary dose to get through that first couple months. And I look back and it's just comical, actually. So that was the whole part of that that appointment, but that lump stood out. And I was like, oh, I haven't noticed anything. And so I put my hand there, and it was just clearly, obviously, right there. And then I could see it when I saw it in the mirror. I'm like, oh, it's right there. You could totally see it. So they referred me for the neck ultrasound, and it came back normal. This was at Minneapolis Radiology. They do a lot of treatments and a lot of images. And so that doctor had said, I think I maybe skipped something here. No, I didn't. Okay, so that doctor referred me to the ultrasound. The ultrasound came back normal. But when I drove away from that appointment, actually the appointment where the doctor was giving me meds for going back to teach, I drove away and I was like, this isn't good. I just kind of knew that there was something there. And then some of the symptoms I've been having, even though I was always told I had normal symptoms, I was normal, nothing in the blood showed up to say anything different. And so I went to that ultrasound, said they were normal. Then my doctor referred me to an endocrinologist. And he couldn't get me in for, 6 or 8 weeks. But like I said, as I'm driving away, I'm like, I know that this is not good. This is something. So that 6 weeks, 8 weeks isn't gonna cut it. And so my brother-in-law knew from someone he used to work with, they knew the head of the endocrinology at Mayo. So I got in a week at Mayo. And he is the head of the kind of the thyroid cancer guru, the thyroid guru. And so I went there on the 12th of October, my sister's birthday. She came with me, and they did the whole another ultrasound. I brought mine with, and he goes, no, ultrasounds at Mayo are different than ultrasounds anywhere else. I'm like, okay, well, you know what you're doing. So I went in and did that ultrasound. It took about an hour, and the neck area is not that big. It was just very thorough, much different than the one I had at Minneapolis Radiology. And then the radiologist came in and did a procedure, fine needle aspiration, and then took the 6 passes of the samples. And then on Monday, the 15th, they said, yes, it was metastatic papillary thyroid cancer. So I think, if I remember correctly, when I found out that that was cancer, and not knowing any kind, like he just said what it was, I just knew it was thyroid cancer. I didn't know what kind it was, and I knew there were variations, but I didn't really know what that entailed. And so I somehow, I don't know, probably on Facebook or something, learned that our classmate had died of thyroid cancer the day I found out. But hers, it turns out, there's 4 grades of thyroid cancer. Hers was like, once you are diagnosed, it's terminal type of thing. So it's just like a matter of time type thing once people are diagnosed with that. And it was really, really, really unusual that a girl, a female, say 35 years old, would have gotten that type of cancer anyway. It's usually people who are older, have been exposed to radiation, and men are the ones that have mostly had that kind. So anyway, I didn't know what it was. So when my doctors are telling me, this is the easy one, that's not really what my perspective was based on what I had just learned. So there's my easy one. And what happened is it had metastasized to the lymph nodes. So the primary tumor was in the right side of the thyroid gland, and then it metastasized to a bunch in the jugular chain. And so when they went into surgery October 30th, they took all that out, or as much as they think they could. Then you just take 2 weeks off and you go back to school, and you're not on any meds at this point because you're preparing for treatment. So when your thyroid gland, does everybody know what a thyroid gland does? It does everything. There's a pituitary gland in your brain, which is like a master gland, and so is the thyroid gland. The pituitary tells the thyroid gland what to do, and the thyroid gland affects there's receptors in all the tissues of our body for thyroid hormone. So it is a big deal, and it was ironic that I was teaching this at the time of my anatomy physiology class, and the first sentence of my book said the thyroid gland controls every cell in the body, and they just took it out of me and then didn't give me any medication. So they want you to get really hypothyroid so that you can absorb the radiation, the iodine, better, so they can see if there's any, if it's anywhere else. And so no thyroid gland, no medications, and go back to do nuclear medicine in January. So from October to January, you'll be fine. Most people do fine. They're not tired. They maybe have a little blood pressure issue. So I was dragged into school, and I would go into the school nurse. I'm like, can you check my blood pressure? I think my brain is gonna explode. Like, just the pounding and the whatever, and it was high, but not like what in my head it felt like. I just was like, felt really wrong because I felt so bad. I learned later that you don't need to be off your medication for 3 months by the time it was, in order to have that treatment. So there was some lapse in communication with the nuclear medicine and my doctor and stuff. But anyway, so you go through the nuclear medicine, and they, give you a cup. This is what they do at Mayo. It's different in other places. But they gave me a cup. It looked like a sippy cup of water that had radioactive iodine in it. And they would give you different doses based on your type of cancer or how severe or whatever. It just depends on everybody's different with that. And they have it duct tape around it, and they seal it, and there's a straw in it. They come with basically a hazmat suit on, looks like a space suit, and they come and they say, here, drink this, and it just tastes like regular water. There's no taste to it or anything. But so I'm thinking, this doesn't seem right. They're wearing all this protective gear, and they tape up the glass. I have a little straw to go out of, and I'm gonna put this in my body. So it's kind of scary, but you do what you do because you're in that spot, and that's what you're doing. So I started my meds after that, pretty much right after treatment, and I felt okay. I thought, okay, this really is easy. This isn't gonna be a big deal. Once I start those meds, I'm gonna have a clean slate. I got nothing in here. I'll start the meds, it'll be perfect. Just kept doing follow-ups, but I stopped feeling good, and then I started getting worse. That's a whole rigmarole of stuff I did, whole body scans, ultrasounds, PET scans. I had a recurrence less than a year later, I had to do it again. And then after that, just could never feel better. And I actually felt worse. Mayo, they're awesome, but they do things their way. And after 3 years, I went to my appointment with my endocrinologist, and I said, I need to do something different. I can't function like this. I'm barely functioning like this. And he thought that since my husband helps around the house, that what else do you need? You don't really need to do anything else. And so I was done. He said, I won't do any of the other medications. Nothing else will work. This will just take time. And I was like, okay, I'm out. And many people were just amazed that I left Mayo Clinic. And I now know, just working with people in the health world, that I feel like about 50-50 people they either love it or they're like, I'm out, I'm not dealing with their way. So they're awesome. Initial diagnosis, the treatment, the surgeon, whatever, all that was awesome, getting the process. And when you go there, you have everything, it's accessible to you. All the doctors know everything that's going on with you. But if you don't fit, in my situation, if you don't fit into their protocol, into their plan, the way they treat metastatic papillary thyroid cancer, too bad. This is how we do it. He crossed his arms and he said, it won't help to do anything when I asked about doing something different. So I'm like, okay, I'm out. So I found my own doctor. it was kind of in this stage where I was feeling like this. You know, you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you can't do both. So that's kind of where I was at with that. Went to the new doctor. Funny how this works. I walk in and he says, so I used to work under your doctor at Mayo. And I was like, oh, he's gonna do the same thing because that's how he was trained. And he goes, the problem is the way that they treat this is you're gonna feel like shit. He just flat out said it. And that was the first time I met him. I said, can we just try another med or an additional med? He goes, yep, we can. The first time I met him. So he saw my records and everything, and I was like, thank goodness. So that was where I started to, it took the edge off. I started to feel, you know, much better. So he monitors tumor markers. We do ultrasounds. I've had to do some more fine needle aspirations, PET scans, a couple more of those, but just really fed up because there's only so much that they'll do. So kind of have to take it into your own hands. And this is kind of where I really, you know, it's not about thyroid specific. Not everybody in here has thyroid cancer. A lot of you probably have thyroid disease because that's how it is now, sadly. But you have to really be your own advocate and take things in your own hands if you're not feeling better. And so the whole point of this is that people are told that they're supposed to feel a certain way because we're either getting older or it's normal to have high blood pressure. It's when we get older, it's normal to have, you know, high cholesterol or whatever, and it's just life, and just take this pill and you're good to go. It doesn't have to be that way. If you want to do that and take the pill and whatever, that's fine. If you're comfortable with that, if you feel fine, go ahead. But if you don't, you can find your own way and your own path. So there's options out there. So I became my own and only advocate for my health. I don't mean that in my like personal life, but I decided I'm gonna go to a nutritionist because that's the only thing I hadn't really dove into very deeply. I was just trying to get balance with the medication and manage the cancer. Obviously that was the first thing. So I thought, well, I haven't looked at nutrition, and my doctor at Mayo said, well, that probably won't really help you anyway, but go ahead if you want to try that. So I tried it, and it planted the seed for what I ended up by doing, you know, a few years later. I went to a naturopathic doctor, came across one of those. So a naturopathic doctor is someone who's got, you know, the same kind of medical training, not the same kind, but the same years. You go to undergrad, you have to have an undergrad and a pre-med degree. Then you get a 4-year medical degree in a naturopathic-based school. And then you do residency and that kind of stuff. You do clinical training, just like an MD route or a DO route. It's just more natural-minded. Found her, saw cash pay. I called her and said, here's what I got going on. Can you help me? She said, yes. I said, how much, you know, can you give me an estimate just to start? And she said, it'll be probably at least $2,000, $2,500. And I said, okay, sign me up. I didn't care what it was. I knew I was gonna pay for it on my own, but I was just over it. I wasn't gonna just settle for feeling okay and not being able to function and thrive and do my job and take care of my kids and my family. I was mind blown because when she talked to me and I told her my symptoms, I was braced for her to say, oh, it's normal, like it's okay. You know, you're getting really old, you're 35 or whatever it was. So the first thing she said to me was, it totally makes sense that you feel the way you do. You know, it totally makes sense. And it was kind of like vindication for all these years, going back to high school, going back to college in particular, when I was 24 after being married, and they said, you're getting older, so of course you're gonna be tired, or you're just too stressed, don't worry so much. Heard that all the time. It just was finally like someone got me. So anyway, got me on the right path, and then we focused on those 3 things, the thyroid, adrenals, and blood sugar. So the thyroid, I was being managed by the endocrinologist, and then she was helping me with the rest of this stuff. So this is where I learned this. This is from, you know, pretty long time ago. So someone knew something way back in the day that food was pretty important for us. So, I don't know why this is slow. Okay, so my first nutrition plan, just from talking with the nutritionist, jumping back a little bit, I just started balancing my blood sugar with my food. I wasn't hungry that often prior to that, or I wouldn't eat because, you know, my weight was all kind of up and down, so I didn't want to eat because that was what you do, is you restrict calories. That's what you've always been told. I started eating some fat. I started to identify what I thought were healthy carbs versus unhealthy carbs, and we all know what unhealthy ones are. I mean, it's the Oreos and the chips and the crackers and that kind of thing. And then I avoided processed foods. And I got out of the mindset. I had to train myself to get out of the mindset of worrying about calories and just change that. But that's just so ingrained in our society and our culture. It still is. People really struggle with that. I mean, when I tell people, you know, just add 1 teaspoon of fat to your breakfast, and they have major anxiety about that because they've been told so long that they'll become, you know, really obese because of that teaspoon of fat. So it took a long time. So my preliminary results were just the inflammation started coming down, had some weight loss, depression, and anxiety. I got off my meds this way. I'm a rule follower. I take, you know, your medical and your health very seriously, and when I don't not listen to my doctor, but I went back to her because I needed, the one I got medicine for school. I went back to her and I said, something's not working. I went through all this stuff, and she gave me 6 more prescriptions before I walked out that day for all kinds of things. One of them was Topamax, which is for seizures, which I do not have because the side effect of it is weight loss, and that's something I was pretty stressed about. So she gave me a seizure medication, and after that I was like, I'm done. I'm not taking I threw them in the garbage as I walked out, and I did not refill the prescription, and what I had left, I weaned myself out. I'm not telling you to do this, just so you know. I'm not telling you to just take yourself off your medications, because I told you what happened those couple days I missed, but I did this over a good probably 3 months. So I was starting to not hate life so much and just feel like the cloud was lifting a little bit, that I was on the right path. I just didn't know exactly how to do it, and it was frustrating, it was hard, and I was kind of on my own with that too. So I went back to the naturopathic, and she did some functional testing. I found that I couldn't have any of this stuff because of antibodies that I had produced to these foods. So this is not allergy, like when you have anaphylaxis from a bee sting or whatever. This is like a latent type response to different foods. There's different immune cells that respond to different types of stimuli, different types of antigens, and in this case they're gluten, dairy, casein in the dairy, soy, and eggs, and then alcohol is just not obviously good for you. So I took all that out for probably, I think it was 2 or 3 years where it was hardcore none of that. So that's really stressful in and of itself, because going out to eat, going to family and friends, it's just really hard, and you don't want to be that person that's got the special this and that, cause you know, brings the attention to your table, and you know, just it's hard. So but I started to feel better. A lot of inflammation started coming down. My medicine started to stabilize with my thyroid stuff. So headaches were rare. I didn't really have any of that anymore. Body aches, much less. Mood, anxiety, depression, there was just a marked improvement in all of that. Better sleep patterns, which obviously you need your sleep. So still not enough. I just, you know, that's one thing, I'm not a very content person, so I just kept on, you know, digging deeper. Frustrating so much of the time, trying to manage the medicines, and for whatever reason, sometimes they work and other times they don't. And you fluctuate back and forth with the dosages you need, and for me it seems like there's no rhyme or reason for it. So I just started honing in on these things: thyroid balancing, adrenal support, blood sugar focus, healthy gut, and sleep and energy could still have been improved. I did more functional testing, hardcore nutrition, and just kept going from there. So I told you that a seed was planted when I went to that nutritionist the first time around, and I was like, I want to do what she's doing. I want to be her, because she talked about, like, I don't know if this is really a term, but medical nutrition or nutritional medicine. She's talking about you know, biochemistry of how nutrients work in your body. That's how she was helping me. And I'm like, that's way different than counting calories, you know, saying to eat 5 fruits and 6 vegetables or whatever a day, you know, using the food pyramid. It's way different than that. It's therapeutic nutrition versus just eating for calories and food groups. So But to do what she did, she had a bachelor's degree, or she was a registered dietitian, so she has a bachelor's degree, and she actually went to NDSU too. But I didn't want to go back for a bachelor's degree, and I had looked at that program when I was in college, and it didn't jive with me then, and I didn't want to be an RD now. So I resigned from teaching, and I did this thing where I applied to a master's in nutrition program. I applied to 2 of them, but I thought my undergraduate credits in biochemistry and anatomy would be so old that that I wouldn't maybe get in. So I applied and I got in, and then I told my husband, because I thought, well, it's no sense of applying, and if I don't think I can even make it in, because I don't want to go back to get undergraduate credits now. And so I got in, so I'm like, okay, now I gotta tell him that I want to quit my job and go back to school and start a business. And I have no business background. So I did that. He was kind of shocked, but supportive. Took 2 years to do it, and then I became board certified. That's a national certification. You have to go I had to go to Chicago to take a test, and then I became licensed in Minnesota, which you have to do to be a nutritionist in Minnesota. And then I started my Rock Bottom Wellness business, and I practice functional medical nutrition. So now how I eat, no gluten, low dairy, low or no soy. I try to avoid that all the way because of thyroid stuff. I eat eggs, but it's kind of on and off, like sometimes here and there. And I'm able to do this now and modify it because I healed my gut and I stayed away from it 100% hardcore for a pretty long time. I'm starting to recognize when I have too much of a certain thing, like the dairy. I can tell if I have 2 or 3 cups of coffee with the cream in it versus 1 cup, I can feel just that difference. So technically I probably shouldn't be doing it at all if I want no inflammation, but I'm trying to balance things out. And then I focus on nutrients for thyroid health, of course. So all diseases begin in the gut. That was my focus from the very beginning, with all those things I mentioned that I started working on right away. All right, so why does this work? Why does this way of eating work? It's whole foods. Your body knows what to do with it. It can assimilate the nutrients from it much better than the Franken foods in the packages that are easy and quick and full of all kinds of chemicals. Our body doesn't know what it is. The microbiome and leaky gut go together. When your gut has the right bugs in it, it's going to help you assimilate the nutrients better. Inflammation it's kept tamped down when you're eating whole foods and rather than processed foods. Stress management is huge, especially if you have or know someone with a thyroid condition. Stress is the killer of that. Stress makes thyroid stuff even worse. If you're a thyroid patient, you are basically an anxiety patient. If you are a thyroid patient, you're a gut health patient. It just goes together for thyroid people. Exercise and sleep, it all goes together, because especially when you have a thyroid disorder, or if you are under chronic stress from other things or any chronic condition, exercise is awesome. We need exercise where you should be moving and be physical and don't let our muscles atrophy and all that stuff. But if you are already sick with whatever it is and you exercise hard or too much, that causes more stress on your body. Your body doesn't care if it's good stress or bad stress. And so you need to find out what works for you, or if you're doing something, you need to, and if you're feeling tired afterwards, the next couple of days, you need to back off on that and change it up, or you're gonna start feeling worse. So through my journey of dealing with this stuff and figuring my stuff out, and I'm not figured out 100% by any means, but I'm much, much, much better than the place I was at a few years ago. So my observations for this is getting back to basics. I want everybody to learn to put all the TV nutrition aside, all the commercials for this product and that product and this type of eating and that type of eating and this pill to help you, the stubborn belly fat or whatever commercial that is, like with cortisol connections. So you hear these little words and you're like, oh, I should get that. That'll solve my problems. Quit relying on quick fixes. Lifestyle is critical. I mean, we always hear that, oh, you gotta manage your stress, you gotta relax, you gotta take time for yourself. It's not cliche, it's a fact. You need to do that. And then food has a profound impact on your health. I have heard so many people that I've worked with, I bet you there's, 20% of people I've worked with they'll say that they've talked to their doctor, I'm gonna go see a nutritionist, or I need to maybe change my food, and they'll say, food has no impact on how you feel. They flat out say that. And I was like, what, really? They said that? Yes, they said that. I'm quoting my doctor. So I don't know if they're like old school doctors, or if they're, I don't know what, but it happens still to this day, which really is surprising. This is not, like I said, it's not just a thyroid thing. You know, if you have any chronic illness, or you have chronic stress, or if you have something that you have been told is normal just because you're aging, it doesn't have to be that way. So get back to basics. The medical system, I just want to touch on this because we're so used to traditional medical systems. That's what our society is sort of based on. You know, other cultures have a whole different type of medicine and ways to take care of their health. And you know, I'm learning a lot more about them. We've heard about these, you know, Chinese medicine, that kind of stuff. You hear about that. I've heard about it all the time, but I understand it a little bit better now, just being in the world that I am now. And I think there's a place for all of them, but basically, traditional medicine treats symptoms, and functional medicine will treat the whole system and try to get to the root cause. So I just like summarize it as functional medicine is more proactive, and traditional medicine is more reactive. There's a place for both. We need both, absolutely. But you're in charge. You're in charge of this, and sometimes people don't think they're in charge because the doctor is end all be all. When my doctor said, you have cancer, we're going to take the whole thyroid gland out, and we're going to, you know, take all the lymph nodes out, I was like, okay, I don't know. It was only on the right side. I probably could have kept half of my thyroid. Didn't even question it, because that's what you do when you're, you know, faced with fear, or you don't understand, or whatever it is. So the point is to stop and ask questions. If something doesn't feel right, or even if it does, like you don't know that it doesn't feel right, like me, I was just like, okay, whatever you say, just do it. You know, ask the questions. You have the right to do that. Questioning healthcare professionals, engage with functional practitioners. If you know people who practice a little different way, you know, maybe look into things, because there are ways that you can make your situation better. So take control, don't give up. And that's all I have to say about that. So just a little bit what I do. Just have 4 more things to talk about, and then if you guys have questions, just please ask away. So what I do is functional nutrition. So function meaning like how do the nutrients help you feel? How do you feel? And if you have a deficiency in something, you know, what is the connection to the symptoms with that deficiency? So I look at root cause in the realm of nutrient deficiencies. Try to be proactive versus reactive. There's things that I've seen with people, like 46-year-old bachelor, he likes to go do the bar thing and do the bar food on such and such a night, because that's when all the guys go and do it. So he has, you know, doesn't drink very often, but he drinks every Wednesday night. He bowls, he eats the bar food, does all that kind of thing. He has all these symptoms with gut health stuff, and I saw in his blood work, I said, you gotta watch your blood sugars. Like, if this is a fasting number, you gotta watch this. And he goes, oh, well, I said it's fine, it's normal. And so I said, you gotta change what you're doing. So he just wanted to take supplements. And I said, no, you gotta change your food, you can't just take supplements. And so he eventually kind of did that. In 1 year later, he ended up with pre-diabetes. They said, you're pre-diabetic. And I kind of did the I told you so, but I didn't actually say I told you so. And so he was like, oh, that's what you meant. Yes, that's what I meant. So he now doesn't do the, you know, sugar like Mountain Dew or whatever he was doing. Just because people don't know, and when you go to your doctor and you get your labs back and they say normal, but there's ways that I can look at it, or a functional practitioner would look at it and go, you know, not that I could diagnose anything, but you're looking at the numbers and looking at how it correlates to nutrition, and you can kind of see what's the trend is. So that's what I try to do. I look at nutrient deficiencies because there's specific deficiencies that correlate to specific symptoms, and I'm seeing lots of patterns now, so I can look at someone's test results and really see the correlation, and it's kind of this aha moment, like it makes sense with what they're telling me, and it really is helpful to get them the right stuff. So I focus on thyroid, of course. That's my niche. I'm the thyroid expert for nutrition. Stress and blood sugar all goes hand in hand. Gut health is always a part of that. But I also do a lot of this stuff. So thyroid, AI is autoimmune conditions. I have some cancer people, and people who just haven't hit their rock bottom yet, but they know they could feel better, but they just don't know how to do it, and they're sick of the quick fixes. So I see a lot of those people too. So I do that through vitamin and mineral assessment. I use specific nutrient protocols in a therapeutic way for, you get your blood results back and you look at where your deficiencies lie, and then we target those with therapeutic levels of supplements and foods for a good 4 to 6 months, and then you can retest, or you can just see out based on your symptoms, and then you go from there. And people, I have people that will email me 2 weeks after they've started their protocol, and they're like, I'm 50% better with whatever. I've got a really good case study next on that. I do online and virtual appointments, so I have people in Dallas, Texas. I have someone in Florida. I can do this through virtual software. And then, sorry, this should say Reset program. That's kind of my signature program. Takes people through to kind of cleaning out their diet, their symptoms, getting their symptoms cleaned up, and then start from scratch and build it back up from there. I do some online classes where it's just self-paced, and you can go in there and take the class on your own at your own pace at your own time. And then this is where I'm going to talk about some of the case studies and how I got to do, or who I get to work with, and the stuff that I get to see when people improve. It's really rewarding. I had a 57-year-old female with major depression for 20 years. She reached out to me. She'd been following me on my Facebook page. She reached out to me and said, "You're my last hope. I'm not working with anybody else. I'm not going to any more doctors. I'm not going to any more psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever." She was done dealing with her depression. And she said, "I just want to try one more thing," which was that Reset program. And then she did the testing as well to look at the nutrients. And she is one where I thought, this is going to be hard, because she's at her rock bottom. She is right down there. And she did and then money was an issue for her too. So she did things kind of in stages, and I was kind of worried about that, because sometimes you don't get the full effect if you don't, just dive in. She did awesome on the Reset program. She followed it to a T. She did really, really well. She lost some weight. She had more energy. Her depression was lifting a little bit. Then she did the testing and started the nutrient protocol. And really, again, she focused on the foods, because that's you're not gonna take supplements forever. You're gonna take foods forever. So you've got to work on that. And she's the one who emailed me, and she said after 2 weeks that she is 50% better with her depression. Then a couple weeks later, she said, "I am 80%. Like, I'm good." Then I just talked to her last Monday. She with her doctor, she's off of her antidepressants that she'd been on for 20 years. So again, not everybody's situation's the same, but you can make such a difference if you know how to, add the foods that you need or fill in the deficits that you have. It can make huge changes in you. I had a 43-year-old female, depression, physical pain, emotional trauma. She had a horrible trauma in her life, like probably 2 years before she started seeing me. And she is like a different person. She did the same thing I just talked about. And she lost the weight that she wanted. She has all this energy. She's on her own with 3 kids. Her husband had committed suicide. I think some of that physical pain was that trauma. I think that's a lot of it was. That has alleviated. It's pretty much gone. And I mean, she's like, I even lost half a shoe size and she wasn't even, she didn't even have that many pounds to lose, but her whole system just changed. And she now has a motivation to keep going, and she's just doing amazing. This was probably 2 years ago when we were finished with everything. I have someone who at the time was 43 when I started working with her, celiac, lupus, Sjogren's, rheumatoid arthritis, so 4 autoimmune conditions. Same thing, her inflammation decreased like crazy. She's sleeping better, her pain was gone. She was having a flare when I started working with her. And then this guy, this is part of the reason why I decided, you know what, I'm going to tell my story and hopefully make an impact for people to realize you don't have to just, you know, listen to what everybody's saying, whether it be your, you know, uncle or your doctor or your, you know, cousin, whatever. People just say, well, you're supposed to feel like that because we're getting older. I hear that all the time. People say that, well, I have kind of an achy shoulder, but I'm sure it's just because I'm getting older. People say that every single time. And yes, there's some things that change as we age, but you don't have to feel terrible just because you're aging. This guy, at 40 years old, he is an IT person. He started where he couldn't move his hands, he couldn't type, he was getting knots in his hands. He had so much pain, and he was just uncomfortable to be in a long car ride. I mean, it was just all these things that impacted his life completely. His job is the computer. He couldn't do it. He found out he had peripheral ankylosing spondylitis, which is a form of rheumatoid arthritis. And so they said, what are my options? And he said, well, they said you can take this medication, but then it'll have these symptoms. And then you'll have this medication and you'll have these symptoms. And so unlike me, who just said, when they said, here you have this cancer and this is what we do we'll take it all out, I just didn't question a thing. He said, I'm not doing that. He's like, I'm not taking the medication. That is what's gonna help me, but it might hurt me in the long run. It actually might be worse. I don't remember which medications it was, but. So he changed his diet tremendously, crazy different diet. And it was really, really strict for a while, but he will say that he cured himself with his diet. That he has no medication. He doesn't have any of the knots on, like the knobs on his joints. He's back to normal and better because he wasn't even that heavy, but he lost some extra pounds anyway, just from changing what he was doing. But the main focus was that arthritis, and it's gone. He will stand up and say that he cured himself with it. So he is the spouse of the doctor that I work out of her office, and he was like, I need to tell the story. I need to tell people that there is something you can do. You don't have to take the meds, do the surgery, whatever, but do it when it's appropriate or when you're comfortable with it. And so that he shared a story. They invited me to come along to be, you know, kind of a guest expert for questions afterwards. And I drove away and I was like, why haven't I done this? It's been 10 years. I could probably tell my story now. So that's part of what it came from, but it was very inspiring because people walked away from there. You know, none of us were up there saying, you know, don't do the surgery or go off your medication. None of us are saying that. It's just saying that you don't have to deal with feeling horrible. You don't. There's so many other things you can do and try to do and not to give up. So that's why I drove away and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do my story now. So that brought me today. So I think probably some of you or all of you are already following me, but here's this stuff. Hi. Here's this, the way to follow me. I'm on Facebook. I have a Nutrition for Thyroid Health group on Facebook. I don't do a whole lot with these. It's just a lot of work. Don't do a lot with that, but I have accounts. And then I want to tell the story again, or I want to do, you know, I like to teach. I really like to teach. I don't need to take anxiety meds to teach it now to people like you. So I would love to do, you know, nutrition topics or have like some kind of seminar. So if there's something like that you find that would be valuable or interesting to yourself or people that you may know, I would come back here to do those kinds of things, because I like to do stuff online, but it's fun to do stuff like this, and I can then teach for real and that kind of thing. So if there's anything that's of interest with that, you know, reach out to me, let me know. So, does anybody have any questions on anything? Yes?
I don't have a question.
Okay.
But great job.
Oh, thank you, Faith.
So interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. And you've heard it in some way, shape, or form a long time. So anybody have questions on any specific nutrition stuff or, I don't know, doctoring or questions to ask or anything like that?
So my thyroid labs always come back, you know, normal, but what should I be looking for? Or are there like warning signs?
Yeah, so I'm assuming they just look at the TSH.
I would assume.
Okay, so you can ask for a bigger panel. Some, in my experience, some doctors will say, well, you're not really high risk for that, or you're not the right age, you know, depending on what the test is. But you can ask them to do a complete thyroid panel. So it's like there's a total cholesterol and then there's a complete cholesterol. You can do that with thyroid. So there's TSH, there's free T4, there's free T3, and I would ask for antibodies too. Because when people are diagnosed with hypothyroidism, I think it's like, I feel like 94% or something like that are actually Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thing. We don't always flag with antibodies right away, but that's something you should just get a baseline. That's what I would ask for. And then the normal ranges for a lot of these things are so broad, and they're based on people who are sick. So when they go to the doctor and they, you know, collect this data, and you go to the doctor usually because you're not feeling the greatest. So those are where those ranges are developed from. And so the range where it's functional, where we actually feel decent, is much smaller. So the normal TSH for, I mean, again, everybody's different, would be like 0.5 to say 1.5 or 2, something like that. A lot of times I've seen people's labs come up and they're at 10, which is, it is actually outside the normal range, and their doctor's like, oh, you're not having much symptoms, so let's not treat it. And then people don't want to go on the meds if they don't have to, so you know, they don't do it. So you have to go by your symptoms, but ask for the bigger panel for sure. Anything else? Yeah.
Well, I've known Tiffany for a long time, and I have another classmate but I had my thyroid when I was 20.
Yes.
Diagnosed when we were in college, and I asked her a lot of questions, and I've done the reset and everything, and have a lot of work to do still, but when I asked you about my TSH, other than medication, is there any other reason why I would have gone hyper?
Antibodies.
Which they wouldn't test for.
Right.
Because they already knew I had them and I had Hashimoto's, they wouldn't.
Yes. Antibodies can change, and they can be indicative of other processes happening. You could be, you know, too much, not utilizing the iodine correctly. You might not have enough selenium or zinc to make the process work better. And so when you're autoimmune, you can do like this. So, you know, you could test in a week and you might not be hyper. Because if you had antibodies before, you have an autoimmune process happening. So you should have someone else test your antibodies. Because you have time to find another doctor and get that figured out. Anything else? Doesn't have to be just about thyroid or whatever. Yeah.
You go. Oh, do you recommend yogurt for gut health, or is there just too much sugar in it?
With Activia or whatever is
it-
marketed.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't, because most yogurts, even if they're vanilla, which you think, oh, that's so plain, there must not be much sugar in there. There's a lot of sugar in them. So yeah, for most people, I wouldn't recommend yogurt for gut health unless it's like a plain yogurt. So unsweetened plain. Yeah, so you could add some, you know, honey into it, a little bit fruit, whatever, some stevia to, you know, because sometimes that plain stuff is a little bitter. So you could do that, and that would help. But that's going to be heavy on the lactobacillus, which is one of many different bacteria that we need. So we think that the yogurt will just take care of it, and there's many, many, many more. So, and that changes with our needs and our health, you know, at any given time. So, but it's okay if it's plain yogurt.
So I am trying to get my family to eat less sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a couple things that I can tell them, like, why this is a big deal, because that is hard. They don't want to do that at all.
Really?
I know. Kids, my teenage kids do not want to give up sugar,
But they're probably not going to care even when you
Well,
say the things that
Tiffany said.
Yeah, Tiffany said. So the thing is obviously the sugar, there's no nutrient value. So when you add the no nutrient value to it, you're not getting the nutrients that will help your cells get what they need. Therefore, they're eventually, maybe not now because they're young, but it'll start to happen when they have a disease process set in because of nutrient deficiencies, or they might just have symptoms of, you know, fatigue, low energy, muscle aches, attention deficit type of behavior, or just, brain fog, not be able to focus. So when you have that, and you know about blood sugar, I mean, that fluctuation in blood sugar causes anxiety, it causes depression, and it causes just stress biochemically in the body. So
sleep, I think they would feel better. I mean, if I can just get them to the point of cut it in half.
Yeah. Yeah, and just keep decreasing it, and then making their food. See, that's the thing. People think that sugar is just the sweet stuff.
It's a lot. It's in everything.
It's everything. I mean, people think it's just anything that tastes sweet is sugar, but it's not. It's carbohydrates turned into sugar. So if it's 6 pounds of white potatoes, yes, it's a whole food, but it turns into sugar. So you need to, I don't know, if you kind of look at the idea of total grams of sugar on a package. So let's use the yogurt. I don't even know, but like 26 grams or something for maybe a cup of sugar, of total carbohydrates. Divide that by 4. That's equivalent to about that many teaspoons of sugar. So like you wouldn't put 6 teaspoons of sugar on your whatever, 6 teaspoons at one time. So that's what it converts to in your body. So you do that, and you do, let's look at the typical American breakfast, bowl of, I don't know, Wheaties, skim milk, orange juice, I don't know. Toast. Yeah, that kind of thing. All that turns into sugar. There's barely any protein in that meal. There's probably no fat because you've been told, you can't do that. So that all turns to sugar. And
there's such a crash, I think, when they have so much sugar.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yep, and that's just that blood sugar roller coaster. And just that roller coaster, when it's up and down like that, actually I think I have a diagram of it. It causes those symptoms of the brain fog and the sleeplessness and the sleepiness. It can cause insomnia too. It's a little different for everybody. I was going to see if I had something on my desktop to show you. I forgot about that. Okay, so can you guys see that okay? Okay, so blood sugar dysregulation, and a lot of us have it. Like, this is something that I had so bad in college, and even when I first started teaching, and I didn't know it, but I ate like you were told to eat in the 90s or whatever it was, which was everything fat. I'd eat what are those fat-free Fig Newtons? They were fat-free, so I'd eat the whole thing because I was starving, and I don't even like Fig Newtons. I don't even like figs. I don't like dates stuff. But it was fat-free, so go for it. But anyway, so no wonder I had all these symptoms. But so here's the sweet spot of where you want where you want normal blood sugar. That range varies a little bit. But generally speaking, when you do your fasting blood glucose at the doctor's office, this is what they'll look at. So when you eat something, if you're a non-diabetic, if you eat something about 2 hours afterwards, it will fall back into this normal range. That's what's supposed to happen. If you are eating that breakfast we talked about, and it's really sugary, you don't have any protein or fat to help balance it out, your blood sugar is going to rise, but then what comes up must go down, so it's going to crash if you don't have anything to mitigate that blood sugar spike. So you come down here, and then what do? You're at work now, and you're really hangry. You can be edgy, you can be craving sugar, whatever it is. And so you go to the vending machine and you go buy a Snicker bar, because there's commercials that tell you that that'll help and satisfy you. So then you go get that, you eat that. That's primarily sugar. There's probably a little protein in it, but it's got a lot of junk in it too. And then you kind of do this you're that green line all day long. And then that sets you up for these symptoms either way. And eventually, that's where that guy I was talking about, he was doing this, but he didn't really believe that it would happen. And it was within a year that he was diagnosed with prediabetes. Then he got serious because he was like, okay, I'm not going another step further. So you don't want it to be down here. You don't want it to be up there. I mean, I've had all these symptoms. There was times when I was first teaching and I was eating like this, that because I would eat or not eat, breakfast or whatever. And by lunchtime, I would get my fat-free Yoplait yogurt, and it's no fat in it, but it's got lots of sugar, and then maybe like a banana, and I can't remember what else, something on that line. And it was so healthy. It was so good for me. I just thought it was the best. And about an hour later, I thought I was going to throw up. I couldn't focus. I was nauseous. And that happened all the time. And I actually went home from school. I used to teach up in Warren, and we lived in Grand Forks. I was an hour. It was a crappy drive. And I drove home a couple of times at lunch because I thought, I'm gonna get, like, I don't want to get sick at school and physically get sick at school. And that's what I thought was gonna happen. I know now it was this. It was blood sugar. But I totally thought I was, I don't know, getting some kind of stomach bug or something. Anyway, so this is where you want to be. I don't know, probably don't want to bring out the chart. I can send this to you if you want.
I feel like
Kids, here's a PowerPoint.
yeah. This is from Tiffany. So
Yeah, so I think
I think saying too that, you know, if this habit continues, it will affect your health in the long run. So
yeah.
let's make some changes now.
Yep, absolutely, because you know, even when we were kids and when my parents were kids, like the foods just changed so much. I mean, I know of people, like, I don't think they've ever made an actual real waffle for their kid. It's always Eggos or whatever. It's all just packaged food, and so their kids don't know any difference. So for them to go from that to eating like eggs and spinach for breakfast is like who would do that? Like, that's crazy. And so anyway, so that's what I would try to emphasize, just the symptoms, and so that they can tie how they feel. They don't even know that this isn't normal. So if they're having those symptoms, make them tie it to, okay, what did you eat? How did that make you feel? And my kids are far from perfect, and I try not to be a complete freak about what they eat and what they do. Especially like when we go to the cabin, it's just a free for all. We just have stuff all over the place. But you know, it's just, I'm just trying not to be so extreme, and they will talk about, oh, I feel so gross. I've just been eating, you know, junk or whatever. They know that. And I'm like, good. I'm glad you know that that's what is causing it, because I think that you know, in our generation, I don't think we're so far removed from knowing how food makes us feel, because we have all this fake food that, I don't know, it's just, we're so far removed from that. But since I'm on the graph thing, I'm gonna show them this one too. No, I think some of you have seen this, but talking about stress, you know, biochemically, and this happens when our blood sugar is out of whack. So if you don't get your blood sugar balanced, you know, the stress pattern will be affected as well. So since we're diurnal animals, we're supposed to be awake during the day and sleeping at night. And during sleep, we're supposed to rest and recover, rebuild our body, everything is regenerating. It's all really good for us if we're getting the right restorative sleep. But with stress that we encounter, and we live in a very stressful society, and we can argue that some people have more stress than others and that kind of thing, but it doesn't really matter. I always use the example of we rationalize good stress and bad stress. Like, somehow we think that it doesn't matter, because we think, okay, this is fun. I'm planning a wedding and this is really, really fun. or okay, I'm planning a funeral, obviously not so fun. They're both super stressful. Our bodies don't care if it's fun or not. Our bodies can't recognize it. Therefore, that biochemical stress on our adrenal glands, the little glands that sit on top of our kidneys back here, they manage all that. And so we have these surges of cortisol, just using cortisol as the hormone that the adrenals put out. There's others too. But they surge 4 times a day in roughly those category or that time frame. So in the morning, we're supposed to have a bigger surge so we can wake up and be alert and function and process through the day and do what we're supposed to do, function and feel good. You shouldn't wake up and feel like you've never even slept, like your head never even hit the pillow. And that's what I was for years. I would wake up and I'd cry because I'm like, oh my God, I have to get up now and I can't. And that's not how it's supposed to be. Then, you know, around this time you have another surge. It's not going to be as high as the morning one, and then you have another one, not going to be as high as the noon one. Then you have one at night that's going to be just a little blip off the map, because now you're supposed to come down and go to sleep and rest. So what I see most often, and this is how I was, my morning surge is down here, my noon one was probably just a little bit better. My afternoon one was probably about the same, and then my night one was out to there. It was really high. So then I was tired and wired because I was never sleeping. So then it just was a vicious cycle, and it just never ever stopped, and I couldn't get on it. So that's how the nutrients helped me, and that's where the B vitamins from animal proteins and nuts and seeds and that type of thing, and then vitamin C from citrus and even green peppers and that kind of thing will help manage your stress biochemically. So those are the nutrients you need to really do that. So look at all the B vitamins and vitamin C. They get soaked up with those little adrenal glands doing all this stress management. They use up every ounce. You eat something, if you're in chronic stress, if you eat something with high vitamin B, this is very simplistic, I'm sure it's much more complicated than this, it just uses it right up, and you have no storage of those vitamins. You have no gas tank with the vitamin B, the B vitamins and vitamin C in it to help you manage through your stress. So.
Tiffany, are there adrenal deficiency testing like thyroid at all?
Yeah. Yep, there's, it's a functional test, and you should test it 4 times a day during those surges. It's a saliva test, and they look at your cortisol levels in your saliva when you should be surging. There's a window, it's like a 2-hour window, 4 times a day, just a 1-day test. So you can see where those things fall. And people can test it, but when I do my intake with people, I ask a ton of questions. I can really kind of pinpoint. I can sort of get a pattern of where there is just by their behavior and what they're telling me how they feel. But I also have learned that a lot of people are out of touch. It's normal to them to feel really low. I have learned that too. So it works a lot of time, but not all the time. So the testing for that is it's very telling. Mine was really telling. I was like, oh. Another reason, it made sense that I would wake up and want to go back to sleep. Like I hadn't even been laying in bed for 10 hours, and that wasn't even close to enough. And that biochemically it showed, well, because you're not surging any more cortisol at all. I was over here. Some of these things like the sensitivity to fumes and those weird symptoms that I'd had for so long, like I'd feel sick from tar. Like if someone was tarring a parking lot or a roof of a building, I'd have major issues. Anyway, so those are the things that happen with stuff, and it can all be combated with the right nutrients if you know what you're looking for. So anyway, any other thoughts or questions? If you keep not asking, I will just keep teaching you stuff and just keep talking.
I was just wondering about some ideas on breakfast. I think that's the hardest meal.
Yeah.
Because you're ready to go do something, and cereal is the quickest.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do a smoothie with spinach and blueberries, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't do that every day.
No.
I mean, I get tired. Variety is the spice of life.
Yeah.
So some ideas.
If you do like egg muffins, make up a big batch of egg muffins. If you freeze them, you can just heat them up real quick. So just with whatever you want, like basically scrambled eggs and vegetables and whatever kind of protein you might want in there. I've done that where you make them in muffin tins, and then you just freeze them, and you can take them out the night before even and have them so they're thawed out nice. And microwaving is not that great for eggs, I don't think, and it's not probably that's a whole other thing. Microwaving is probably not the best thing to do anyway. But I would say that, or making some kind of protein bars, like some homemade. I have a recipe. I think it's on my website. But it's made with, this one is cashew butter and cashews and that type of thing, and then you put in some goji berries or dried blueberries and stuff like that, so you could have it. It's really dense and you don't need very much. I usually cut the sweetness of it with the fruit in half because it's to me it's really sweet. That'd be something you could have. You just keep those in the fridge, and then that would probably, if you're eating just a bowl of cereal, that will by far keep you satisfied. So stuff like that, I would start trying that out. Yep, Jody.
Well, I was just gonna say, you could use Jerome's example with the dairy.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that I get with people because, you know, we like the stuff we like, you know, like whether it be a glass of milk with dinner or whatever it is. You guys are funny. So we like these things. We don't want to give them out no matter what. But when she's talking about her husband and went through my program, and one thing that disappeared pretty quickly, and I don't remember if it was at the second week or even before that, he would always clear his throat constantly, like to the point where it was annoying to other people around him. And I hear that a lot. I hear that it's just that clearing the throat constantly. It's postnasal drip kind of sounding thing, but it's not because of a cold. And it's really, really common, and it's caused, every time I've seen it, and people feel it themselves, it's because of dairy. Because dairy is mucus producing, and if people have that, you know, inflammatory response from dairy, that's what it is. So he is now, what does he do now?
He his almond milk pretty much only, and he has not had that trouble with his throat since, and he just said last week he's gonna redo that program this fall. Because
that's big,
another
Jody.
thing that we knew he lost a little bit of weight, and he's taken about 12 pounds of it off, but he was at the gym, and he's very active and plays basketball, and you know, he's 50, but he all of a sudden discovered he couldn't put his fingers on the ground when he would keep his legs straight. He couldn't touch the ground anymore, and I could see it in his forearms, kind of just the swelling, that he didn't have any hitting edema or anything, but he just didn't look like, I mean, I could tell there was something going on. And he did this reset program, and it was, I bet, well, a week he got rid of the clear in his throat. That was gone within the first week when he got rid of dairy, but all of a sudden he could put his hands flat on the ground. From getting rid of the inflammation. He can't do that again.
Okay, so
And
that's
it's
his marker.
irritating to him. Yep, he's left the dairy alone, but the gluten not so much.
Right.
And so it's interesting because he just said last week in September, I'm gonna get a hold of her again.
Yeah. Cool. And that's big because
He was
didn't
coming in
you
when
want him to do the program
Right.
originally? You know, it's
And
like,
so she was talking to him on the phone, and you know, do you have any? He said, no, I don't have anything. I'm good.
I'm
I
good.
don't have anything going on. And so I had to be
Most
this
men are like
crap
that, by the way.
person saying, yeah, you got this and you got that. No, I don't have anything. And then now that he's known, yeah, he stayed away from dairy though really
Yeah.
pretty well.
so for someone who drank, you know, a glass
A
of
lot
milk
of
with
milk.
every meal kind of thing, and he does almond milk now, it's kind of,
Yeah. He would go to the grocery store at 10 o'clock at night to get milk.
oh wow.
He needed his glass of milk, yeah.
Oh, that's telling. So yeah, I mean, there's,
Speaking of your program.
yeah, no, thank you. That it's, sometimes it's just simple things, but it's hard, you know, if like he really liked his dairy, but some of those symptoms, you know, he knew that it felt better to not have those symptoms. And so, or other people I know too have had some of it, some using dairy as another example. I had someone who started with me because she had terrible IBS symptoms, and she would, it was to the point where it created so much anxiety going to a place that she wasn't familiar with, like she didn't know where bathrooms are. That's how worried she was about going anywhere where she didn't have control of where she was at and where the bathrooms were, and because she could eat anything at this point and it would just send her to the bathroom. And it was identified as dairy when we went through some of this stuff, and she worked on healing her gut, and she said that she misses certain things with dairy, and she'll risk it for the biscuit once in a while if she's in control of her surroundings, but she knows what the consequences will be. Her symptoms aren't as severe as when she, before she started healing her gut and stuff. But so even though she knows what's going to happen, she, in certain cases, she will, if she really wants that favorite whatever, she'll do it. But she knows what she has to do to balance that out on the other side. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's just really a learning thing. I think because I'm a teacher, I like to make sure people understand the why of how, things make them feel, and make sure they understand, because then it's of course easier to stick with things that way. So when you have a grasp of why you're doing it versus, well, I just decreased my calories so I lost weight, so that's all I'm going to keep doing. Well, then that only works until it doesn't, which is usually the case with that type of thing. So any other thoughts?
I know when I did your program too, I think vitamins was my big aha, where I kept bugging Tiffany to say, well, just tell me really like an over-the-counter one, like really which over-the-counter one can I buy? And she kept coming back with none. No, here's what you need actually. So I
Yeah.
think that was my telling thing, that a multivitamin for someone isn't a cure all. That you need to know
Centrum isn't
specifically.
gonna work.
Yeah, you need to specifically know what's for you, and night and day difference for
Yeah.
myself. I know.
I had a guy come in the other day with like a soft briefcase with the shoulder bag thing with the handles on it, and he comes in and he wants me to, okay, I want to go through my supplements and I want you to tell me what to take and what I should take. And he brought this thing in, it's full. I took a picture of it so I could keep track of what it was, and I had to take 3 pictures to get it all in, so I could see the labels, if that tells you. I want to say there was 20 bottles on my desk, and he didn't know what was what, why he was taking any of it. And actually a lot of it was good quality stuff, but I was like, okay, can we pare down? Let's get this down, get back to basic. Let's just start with some of the, whatever. So he couldn't even keep track of them. And part of his thing is he's got some cognitive issues happening because of he's got a infection going on. So his cognitive, like he doesn't understand. He doesn't listen. He doesn't follow. So he was taking 20 things, and then he was having worse symptoms. So it's like, you can't just random willy-nilly take things. And if you watch an episode of Dr. Oz, you could spend $200 of supplements just from his show. But you get them and you don't really know why. Do I really need raspberry ketones? I don't know. But he makes it sound so good, and so people buy them. So anyway, I like to educate people on that. I have a free online course that I told you about. There's a free online thyroid. It's specific to thyroid, for supplemental nutrition for thyroid, that you can just get an idea of the type of stuff that's in there. But that it's specific to thyroid, but it also helps lots of other things too. But there's a lot of education on the difference of supplements in there, and even the stuff that I take, I think, or that I recommend for people, I don't want them taking them randomly or just because they heard it's really good. Many people will say, well, I've heard I'm supposed to take this. Should I just get some? I'm like, well, do you need it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have symptoms that correlate to it? There's some things I think are fine that if, everybody could probably take them, but I don't know. I like for people to understand the why behind it, so. Yep.
I got my kit in the mail today.
Oh,
that
okay.
we talked about, and I was just wondering if anybody used the local clinics to get your blood taken, or do you go to a specific clinic?
Did you get the other thing I sent you for that?
That was the only thing that came, just the box.
An email from me?
Oh, I've been on vacation. I just got
Okay.
back this afternoon.
Check. Okay, check, because I believe I sent you all the information you need for that. But
Is it what I did, Jim?
yeah, well, it's a different version, but yeah.
Oh, really?
But you there's 2 labs in Fargo, and they have both been kind of a pain in my butt with working with, and so, but once they figure it out, they seem to do fine. But I have had people. The reason why I don't think you could just take up to the clinic here is because the test has to be overnighted to Houston, and they don't have a connection or relationship with them, so the test probably wouldn't be viable by the time I got there if they did that. That's why they don't. So the labs that I use they have a connection or relationship with the lab in Houston. So, but there might be some clinics open to do that. They might take your blood and give it to you and have you send it, but I don't know. Do clinics do that, Jody? Will they? I don't think so.
Because they're gonna check, yeah, I would just go, I've done it in Fargo too before, and there's one right behind, 13th Avenue on Shields. Yeah.
Okay.
And you're better off going there, because you might get a supercharger.
Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah, there's a lab in back where I'm from at a I think it's a Fairview clinic that will do it, and I don't know how they must have some kind of connection with them. I suppose some practitioner wanted to work with them that way, but they'll charge like an extra $50 to have the blood drawn just to do it. So anyway.
The other thing about those places in Fargo, they're used to it. They're used to all these they know the routine.
Yeah, not the standard tests or whatever they do. That's what they do, is non-standard or drug testing for like CDL license and that type of thing. I think they have a lot of those people going there. So, anything else? The whole message, I hope that was conveyed, is that, if you have something or know someone who has something and they feel like there's nothing else they can do, there is. And you can start with nutrition. Start eating, it's probably a little bit more than just starting to eat more vegetables, depending on where you're starting from, but it can make a huge impact. It does have a profound impact, and you don't have to just go with what you're told. So, that's it.
Yeah.